My name is Eric Bouvet. I'm in the School of Humanities and Creative Arts, and I am in the Department of Language Studies where I teach French. Is because I can't see how I can teach a topic without having a sense of how this topic is going. And that includes the student's perspective, it includes my peers' perspective as well, and my own perspective in terms of me reflecting on the topic. So for me, feedback is part of modern university teaching, and I think as lecturers we need to ensure that we're giving our students the best possible learning experience, and we also have to maintain high standards and provide support to those students. I've always enjoyed teaching. I pretty much see myself as a teacher. I do research as well, but I really enjoy the teaching side of things, and I've always taken a fairly keen interest on the quality of my teaching. I think it's very important for me, and I naturally want to know how my teaching and my topic are viewed by my students. I think teaching languages require to support students fairly constantly, because the learning requires constant participation for the students. Students often have to come out of their comfort zone and put themselves out there. They need to interact with others, they need to interact with me. There's all sorts of different configurations that they can practice the language in, whether it's student to student, or group interaction, or role playing, or debating, and so on and so forth. So I expect my students to be fully engaged, and I think at the end of the day, I think students, my role as a teacher is to really train students to be ready to speak and write the language and to be functional in the real world. So I need to be aware of the capacity, of the capability, their learning styles, and I need to be aware whether I'm pushing them too much or not. So I think their feedback to me is very important. That way I can gauge how my teaching is going, how my influence on them is going. So I think for me, my conception of the classroom is that the classroom is a breathing and living thing. You don't get no two classrooms are the same, basically, and each cohort of students has its own characteristics, and I need to be able to recognize those characteristics, and I can only do it through student feedback. I think I've been in the university system for about 25 years, and for me, getting evaluation on my teaching, getting feedback from students is a way to keep me in the loop, to keep me wanting to improve, and I think it's a way to push myself, and that feedback may be very positive sometimes, or it may be sometimes a little bit negative, but I think it's good to really have true feedback in order to be able to improve yourself and push yourself a little bit more. Of course I use the sets. However, because I've got relatively low numbers in my classes, typically 10 to 25, I tend to get fairly patchy responses to the sets, and that only gives me a partial picture, I think, of how my teaching is going. I often ask the students after 2 or 3 weeks, or 4 weeks sometimes, what they think of the topic, what they think about the content and how it's delivered, whether it's too fast, not fast enough, whether they like the topics that we're talking about in class, and whether they're interested in something else. And so it's usually done at the end of the class. And I think students are usually pretty good at suggesting what they like and what they don't like. And on a few occasions, because the student cohort is very different to what I usually get, I try to readjust the topic to their ability. So I often tell my students that my programs, which I give them at the start of the semester, are indicative, that they are open to negotiation. And I've fairly often actually changed the course slightly. But this said, I still try to work towards the aim and outcomes of the topic. I mean, that's very important that we meet those aims and outcomes. And but I've got no problem taking an alternative route if need be. And I think the students feel quite comfortable knowing that their lecturer or their tutor, is flexible as far as the program is concerned, and that changes can be made. I think they get the feeling that we care for them, and I think it's very important. So what I also do is that I monitor the students individually. I talk to the class as a whole, but I can also talk to the students on an individual basis, and if they're doing well in the topic, I can tell them about ways they can extend themselves. If they're not doing so well, particularly if they're shy, I try to come up with suggestions and strategies for them to, to do a bit of work outside of class and to prepare the class a little bit more so that they can talk in class having prepared something. So this is a way for me to get feedback, but it's also a way for them to feel a bit more confident and hopefully for them to engage with the topic a little bit better. I use end of semester questionnaires, not in all my classes, but in some of them I've done it. So that helps me to evaluate particular aspects of the topic. I think I can target a little bit more than using the sets. I mean, the sets are still very valuable because they are a standard way to evaluate teaching, and that's good to have a standard way to evaluate teaching across university, but sometimes I think it's good to actually have those more targeted questions in order to have an idea of what the students think of assessment, for example. On a few occasions I've had my teaching peer evaluated 3 or 4 times, I think, in the last few years. So I think it's a very valuable snapshot of one's teaching from an external point of view, and it can actually give you very valuable information in terms of how you interact with students. I think especially the last peer review that I had was very, very good. And I've been a peer evaluator myself, so it's quite good to be on the other side of the lens as well, to see how people work. And even if it's not, even if you're peer evaluating a class that is not in your in your discipline, I think it's still important, and you actually can learn a lot from these peer evaluations. I think that in combination these approaches have been useful to the students, because whether they are high achievers or not, I think they want to feel supported and they want to know that we care for them. And I think it's particularly important in language learning, because language learning can be stressful, it can provoke high level of anxiety in classes where people don't particularly want to talk, or they have the impression that they are with other students who are much better than them. I think it's important for them to be supported and feel that their lecturer, their instructor, listens to them. And my approach to students and to teaching has changed, and I think obviously it's partly due to me becoming more mature, but it's also partly due to the fact that I get feedback, and that as a result of feedback, and as a result of talking to students, and as a result of talking to colleagues, I think I've become a little bit more relaxed and more ready to change plans if it's required. And yes, and I think at the end of the day, what's important for me is for students to come to me at the end of the semester and say, we've really enjoyed your class, and thank you very much. And I think that's what basically gets me going as far as teaching is concerned. I think at the end of the day, you want the students to have learned what you wanted to teach them, and you want them to have a good experience and be satisfied with the topic you've taught. So I think this is having a student or two or three, coming to see you or sending you an email saying, oh, I've really enjoyed your class, is the best gratification as far as I'm concerned. And that's why I'm doing this job, basically.